Through a connection made back home, I was offered a sweet deal to house sit here in Elk Mound for way less than rent would cost. A decent, though limited gig I imagine would work out pretty well during my relocating here for work. My end of the bargain? Keep the place up while the owner, a doctor by the name of Bill, traveled Europe 2 months out of the year. I figured by the end of the gig I'd be settled in at work, be a bit ahead in the dough department, and ready for full rent in a place of my own. So the job, the relocating, was a piece of cake, or so I thought. Soon the operation up here went par for the course. More lousy cutbacks, lo and behold, a month in and whammo, on the skids again. Temporarily, they said. Heard that one before. I decided I'd finish out the stay at the house here while I reassess my line of work. 2 weeks seemed like 2 months. Slumping around the house. Too much time to dwell on the wear and tear in my lower back from all the lousy lifting I'd done at these kinds of joints I'd worked too many of over the years. Too much damn time lamenting about how Pop tried to get me to buckle down and give some serious thought to a possibility of a real profession. Dad had me pegged for a scientist from the time I was a twerp. I knew I had an interest, but some stupid-ass early drug use mixed with a good dose of laziness, and down the straight path I strolled. TV sucked. The internet killed a bit of time, but the best quell for my unemployed newcomer monotony. Anyway, that's when it all started. A hefty thunderstorm had rolled through the night before, and it got me up earlier than usual, so I put my time to use. After all day combing the internet for openings anywhere and coming up scratch, I got up, stretched out a kink, and moseyed out back of the house to catch a smoke. This is when I first noticed the funny smell. Hard to pinpoint exactly. Kind of like burnt garbage with blueberries, turned fish, and a hint of turpentine all swirled together. I failed at bellowing out a few large puffs as a smoke shield against the onslaught of odor, so I squinted around the yard. Guided by my stressed olfactory, the source of the stench was a cinch to find. Bingo! There she blew. I thought about giving it a poke with the stick, but caught myself at the thought of what worse noxiousness might be released if I breached its skin. So I opted instead for a few safe snapshots. Surfing images, I pulled up all kinds of mushrooms and funguses, gross as shit not so commonly found. A couple of wise-ass dickheads put Elephant Man and Jimmy Durante's nose in the mix. Real funny. In the end, though, nothing came close to matching the pictures I had taken. I admit the buried little twerp scientist in me was being reawakened. So I decided to run with this thing a bit. I figured what better way to fend off a little unemployed boredom. I supported local with a few essentials from the mom and pop hardware store on Main Street. Maybe spent a few dimes more there, but fuck giving it to those dirty big boxes. The damn thing was stubborn enough. Felt like it had a couple mighty thick roots that ran deep on it. I figured there was no budging it without an axe, so I quit to catch a breath. Before I brought on the axe, I decided on one more good yank at it shovel-wise. Oddly, that's when it seemed to let go all on its own. Man, when I watched whatever the hell it was wriggle back down into the earth, a good chill went up my spine to say the least. The fuck was this thing? One thing was, as I noticed my unemployment preoccupation fading. Good riddance. With my curiosity thoroughly tweaked, my thoughts went a swirl on all sorts of possibilities. With the putrid cloud and all still lingering, The house was off limits. Instead, I opted for a spot in the garage. The plan was simple. A cooler, some ice, plastic wrap, and a knife to cut square sections, first across its surface and then layer by layer deeper. Any doubt that this thing had to be something completely unique to the world, or at least botany, vanished. On the other hand, an uncomfortable distrust of my own perception started to sink in. Was I losing it? Hell, or maybe this whole ordeal was the simple result of a too close proximity to a highly toxic hallucinogenic fungus of some sort. I looked around the house, the walls, rugs, the paintings, but had no present symptoms of altered perception. Maybe I'm in over my head, I thought. Better scrap any further notions about this thing. I knew there was a university in Northfield, the town over, so I cautiously locked the garage tight and decided that this shit was too weird that in the morning I'd let some schooled experts in on what I found. It was late. I was the only one at the laundromat, waiting for a batch to dry. I stepped out for a smoke. I noticed a few pimple teens lurking who looked like a bit of trouble. They all ran in as I was stepping out. After a bit, as I was finishing the smoke, I noticed the gang of youth dashed back out, brushing me aside as I went back in. I didn't think much of it, so I took a seat to rest my back. After 10 minutes or so, the dryer buzzer went. As I began unloading, I found a fucking open jar of peanut butter, a couple partially popped and fizzing cans of soda, and son of a bitch in brown and color spots from a couple handfuls of melted M&Ms. I ran out and I looked for the little fuckers, but the lousy brats were gone. Returning to my spoiled laundry, I stopped in my tracks as piece by piece my pile of clothes floated up and out of the dryer to the ceiling. Then a loud chorus of laughter out of nowhere began mocking me. It had been a real long day. I just stood there in a daze, watching my flying laundry too high up to snatch it. What the fuck do I do now, I thought. I was beaten. I just wanted to get home. I felt like crying. And as I looked down, my feet were stuck to the floor that somehow transformed itself into a thick, squishy layer of butchered meat with what smelled like industrial-strength glue or something dumped all over the top of it. There was a deep feeling of depression as I was hopelessly stuck there like a fly to paper. Whatever fear my twerp scientist self had was gone. I figured, if this was the discovery of the century, what clout would I have anyway to keep the credit if university muckety-muck stepped in? In my haste, I opened the garage without any mask on, but strangely the stench had all but dissipated. At first I decided to just observe for a while. The glow the thing had the night before was still out. There was no movement. I poked it a bit, nothing. Had I killed it? Then with trepidation, I slowly began to cut into it. Mushroom, plant, fungus, my ass. This thing was like nothing else. It didn't make any sense. A plant with animal flesh? Like a land clam or intermittent phosphorescent yard urchin or some shit? Whatever it is, I'll snare the damn thing and ice it down first. Then I'll run, cowering for university assistance. Terrified, I laid there in shock. Whatever the fucking thing sprayed me with caused my motor functions to rapidly deteriorate into paralysis. I maintained some feeling around my eyes. All else was numb. I immediately tried to scream for my life, but felt additional horror noticing my vocal cords had been rendered useless. I found a slight distraction in the miasmic wafting that permeated the room. Was it the shit juice that squirted my face? The thing itself? Or my own defecation due to the loss of bodily functions? My last thoughts were of being eaten and that no one would know I'm missing to look for any remnants of my corpse until Dr. Bill returned. I felt intense surges of youthful euphoria. I felt really fucking great. No fear, no backache, no any ache. I felt light as a feather, but when I actually started to float, I thought, oh fuck, an afterlife after all. Albeit one complete with the odors of before life? Albeit indeed, as it seemed I had definitely pissed and shit myself. I might have minded a week ago, but here in my stinking garage paradise, I laughed euphorically at the thought of floating for eternity wearing my own reeking piss and feces. I wanted to explore this heaven. I remember moving my hands and feet, but it was my mind that dictated my motion.
2, 3, 9, 11, 12, 15, 51,
My initial response was to run upon having my buzz killed at the thought of sharing heaven with fuckface. Maybe I'd rather swim to hell, I thought. As it began feeding me information somehow, I became entranced. Of all things, President George Walker Bush's little right-hand man, Karl Rove, popped into my thoughts. I recalled as I floated there giddy as hell of the nickname Bush had given Rove, Turd Blossom. So I asked it with my mind, would it care too much if I called it Carl? Not a problem, it told me. Unsolved riddles of math and physics, great mysteries to humanity for eons, were easily solved as Carl flooded my cortex with every answer. Carl began to put a real hurt on my terrestrial head. I noticed my concentration rapidly slipping. My floating abilities wane, and it was all I could do to eyeball a chair for a safe landing.